Okay, so we're back at day 3 up in the green room with Derek Vadala with Cyber Assessments, which is, if I'm right, a joint venture between Moodys and Team8.
That's right.
Yeah. And how long has it been around?
We incorporated back in July of last year, so we've been around about 6-7 months now.
6-7 months. And this was really exciting. He's about to take the main stage maybe in about a half hour here,
Yeah.
but I thought I'd grab you before you went on. This was one of those sessions when it came in, it was an easy yes, because Moody's, of course, is known for your credit ratings, your AAA bonds,
That's
and all,
right.
how you rate that. So the idea of rating the cybersecurity of a company was very intriguing. How far along are you guys in developing even what you're going to call the rating? You know, are you going to try to match the AAA, or is that still work in progress?
It's a work in progress. We're unlikely to match the AAA because we think that's something that's very closely associated with credit.
Okay.
We wouldn't want to create confusion around what this rating is versus what a credit rating is. But it's likely to match things like you see in the environmental risk space, where we have a cohort and a scale that sort of maps to how different companies are performing around cyber risk. And so it'll look somewhat like a credit scale, but it'll be different enough so that it doesn't create market confusion. We're reasonably far along. As I said, we've been at it for about 6-7 months, but this is something that we have been thinking about and working on behind the scenes for a couple of years as we really thought carefully about how to build this out. So we're working right now through our base methodology. We're working with a couple of organizations in sort of a proof of concept mode, and we think that we'll have something meaningful to share with the broader market toward the end of this year.
And I can imagine just trying to think how I would do it if I was asked to come up with a system. And it just seems like you have a trade-off between you want more information, you want maybe even a hands-on view, and then you could give a very detailed score. If you spent 6 man-months with 2 or 3 really top people, you could come up with a pretty good score, but that doesn't scale. Or maybe it does, and then on the other hand, you can send them a 10-question questionnaire, and you could get it in a half hour, but of what value is it? Have you looked at where the level of effort to determine the score is going to be?
Yeah, that's something we're really looking carefully at,
Yeah.
Dale, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. There's obviously a balance between speed and effort and fidelity of the results, and so we want this to be meaningful. We want it to be holistic. It will bring together a number of different factors and inputs, including some of the things you mentioned, like surveys.
Yeah.
But of course, to do this the right way, you have to validate it. You have to go inside the company. You have to have some conversations with management. We certainly don't view that process as something that looks like 6 months, but we do expect there to be a reasonable effort with the companies that are involved. We're still working to calibrate that, and it is still early days. But it is something we're thinking very carefully about, how to balance that scale versus the fidelity of the results and the rating.
And I would imagine it'll change over time. You're bound to learn something after you do the first 100 or 500 of these.
That's right, that's right. I think as we go through this over time, we're going to be looking very carefully about what are the easy signals to collect that are low effort and low friction with organizations that are very meaningful in terms of the fidelity. Then we can kind of prioritize those and maybe wean ourselves off of some of the more complicated, effort-laden processes that we build out in the beginning. So optimizing those processes, making things more automated is obviously one of the core things that we have to focus on in year one.
You know, the cloud security folks, CSA, they have levels of certification. So you can
That's
do
right.
level 1 is just a self questionnaire. No one looks at it, and then you get more and more rigor as you go down. Have you considered anything like that, like a rigor associated with the certification?
Yeah, so we're thinking about that as a secondary kind of effort and use case. Obviously, we think that the market will be interested in sort of the all-in holistic assessment and rating, but we think there's also a need in some adjacent use cases to do something perhaps with a lower level of fidelity and validation, but something that can be done much more rapidly. And so that's something that we're not focused on at our core mission right now, but it is something that we have on our strategic roadmap to further consider and develop.
Okay, well, I don't want to get you too close to your talk, but let's talk about one other area. I think we have a few minutes. So let's say you're successful. You come up with the methodology, you're able to apply a cyber risk rating to organizations, a number of them, so it becomes credible. How do you envision it being used in the early years?
Yeah, so we think one, organizations will use this to understand where they sit relative to their peers and use it as a mechanism to improve their security programs and reduce exposure.
That's the question we get a lot, how are we compared to our
That's
to our
right,
peers?
and we think it's something that's really missing from the products in the market today. The second thing is I think companies that go through the process will use this as an insurance discussion.
That's
right?
what I was wondering.
And so today, if you're a CISO, you're spending a lot of time preparing for your annual insurance renewal or getting a new policy for the first time. We think that organizations could use this as an entry point to that discussion and help them bring some negotiating power and the right level of external validation to the table when that happens. And of course, there are other use cases. You can imagine this going all the way down to the investor level at some point. Mm-hmm. We think that's a little bit further out, but we think there's an opportunity for many different use cases for this over time.
Well, that probably will track with the increased reporting to the SEC that Lisa Soto talked about.
That's right.
As they want more information on risk, then it becomes more interesting to the investors because it's disclosed data, and that makes sense.
That's right. Very interesting discussion with Lisa yesterday, and I think certainly something that we're very mindful of. We've actually just had an individual named Chris Hetner join the organization last month. Chris was the special advisor to the SEC chair for the last few years and also worked in the cyber risk practice at Marsh. So as we bring people like Chris into the organization, we're then starting to focus very much on the regulatory requirements for board oversight and thinking about that as we build out the product.
It's probably too early, but I have to ask, have you announced anything with insurers yet? Because I could very easily see if I'm in your shoes, I'm going to insurance companies saying, hey, why don't you write a product that at least has a component based on this rating we're coming up? Has anything officially been announced yet?
Yeah, nothing official yet, but of course we're talking to many of the insurance underwriters throughout the process.
Okay.
So more to come there.
Appreciate you coming to S4 and good luck on the main I can't even talk. Good luck on the main stage.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.